Lord, have mercy upon us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness has appointed the office of the rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trust in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, the House is now in session. Members, the minutes of the 17th of February have been circulated. Are there any amendments required? There are none. They'll be confirmed as printed.
Messages from the governor.
There are none.
Announcements by the speaker.
Members, we received notification this morning that MP Keynes will be absent today. Secondly, there was a comment that I was going to make regarding Standing Order 1911H, which I will defer until later in the proceedings.
Messages from the Senate.
There are none.
Papers and other communications to the House.
There are none.
Petitions.
There are none.
Statements by ministers.
This morning we have three statements. The first is in the name of the Deputy Premier and Minister of Home Affairs. Minister, would you like to put your statement this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to honorable members and the listening public. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to announce the commencement of the new LED initiative with which the government is giving back in quite a literal sense to the people of Bermuda. In July 2022, the government announced the LED initiative as part of the $15 million stimulus package, and now we are delivering. Mr. Speaker, this stimulus proposes to distribute an initial 150,000 LED light bulbs over the coming months to the Bermuda public. After this, initial distribution needs will be assessed at that point to determine whether a second phase of LEDs will be distributed or another measure is implemented. First, we are targeting the most vulnerable, namely our seniors and our households with lower incomes. We will do that through identifying those households initially through organizations like the Bermuda Housing Corporation, Age Concern, Department of Financial Assistance. We will work through our local charities who assist families in need to ensure that we get the bulb to the hands of those whom the reduced power bills can benefit the most. Mr. Speaker, the past months have been spent in a thorough and rigorous procurement, ensuring the best value for money spent. The bulbs will come at a landed cost to the government of $1.59 each. We are also working right now on developing efficient ways for the public to reach out to us to let us know their level of needs so that we can ensure the stimulus goes to them. And lastly, for those who are not seniors or in lower income bracket who will still want to take measures to lower their energy expenditures, we will arrange for them to be able to collect their bulbs at a convenient location. Mr. Speaker, we are bringing in enough bulbs in this phase so that each household can have 4 A19 types that are a mid-range color rendition, because we all know that all LEDs are not created equal. A19 bulbs are the typical light bulb that is frequently used in lamps and task lighting, and the color is a warm white, not too yellow or too blue, but close to the color of sunlight. In addition, the bulbs will be dimmable, of a dimmable variety, so that they may be used in any fixture that suits an A19 bulb. And all bulbs are UL listed to ensure quality. For those who might not be aware, UL stands for Underwriters Laboratories, who provide testing and approval for a wide variety of consumer goods, particularly electrical, Mr. Speaker, to ensure quality and safety standards are met. One might inquire, Mr. Speaker, as to why LEDs are targeted as subject of this ministry's stimulus. Your answer is clear by reflecting on the Department of Energy's LED Exchange Program of 2019, in which 12,500 LEDs were given to anyone bringing in an old incandescent bulb into participating retailers. Those 12,500 bulbs are relatively small expenditure, saved a total of up to $7 million over the life of the bulbs for consumers that would otherwise have been used to pay electricity bills. Mr. Speaker, LEDs are for everyone. There is no instance where switching to LED lighting will not result in savings. A very simple measure of screwing in a light bulb produces significant savings. If we posit that a single 60-watt equivalent LED is used for 5 hours each day at our current kilowatt hour prices, that equates to a savings of $37 per year. The normal lifespan of an LED is 4 to 6 years. And if we consider that most conservative length of time at 4 years, which will equate to a savings of $148 each LED over its lifespan. For 4 bulbs, the savings is about $592 over the usable lifespan of each household. Mr. Speaker, considering the combined total savings of all of the 150,000 bulbs, adding up to a sum of $22 million, most of which will remain circulating in our local economy over the next 4 years, just from changing the light bulbs in your home. Mr. Speaker, the benefit does not stop at just monetary savings. Each bulb does the right thing for our environment as well. A single LED over the course of its life saves about 240 kilograms of carbon dioxide from entering our atmosphere. Together, all of those LEDs will prevent 36 million kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions from being produced. To put into context, it is the same as taking more than 4,000 cars off the road. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased that this initiative, simple as it may seem, satisfies all 3 pillars of sustainability. It helps our people by reducing their energy bills. It helps our economy by keeping millions of dollars on island instead of, quite literally, burning those dollars on electricity. Lastly, it helps our environment, demonstrating that small measures do add up and that energy conservation is something that we all and should accomplish. Mr. Speaker, this initiative, combined with payroll tax rebates, school uniform support, increase to financial assistance, reduction of vehicle licensing fees, freezing of gas prices, and the elimination of duty on staple goods, are all examples of a government that is working to reduce the impact of a 40-year high rate of global inflation in Bermuda. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Transport. Minister would like to present your statement at this time.
Thank you, and good morning to listening audience. Mr. Speaker, last November, following my appointment as the Transport Minister, I stated my three high priorities. They were number one, air service development. Number two, air service development. Number three, air service development. And based on that, I'm sure most of you can guess what my number four priority is. Increasing air service and securing airlift during the winter is of significant importance to the residents and visitors alike. Mr. Speaker, today I'm pleased to announce that our long-term airline partner, JetBlue, will provide direct winter service between Boston Logan International Airport and Bermuda's LFA International Airport. The announcement today is a direct result of months of discussions led by the Ministry of Transport with assistance from the Bermuda Airport Authority, our partners, the Bermuda Tourism Authority, and Bermuda Skyport Corporation. JetBlue's new winter schedule will include 4 round-trip flights per week between Boston and Bermuda, commencing November 2023. But they'll start running through to March 2024. JetBlue will resume its regular daily summer schedule starting early May this year. JetBlue's year-round services to Boston will complement its existing service between New York, JFK International, and Bermuda. And the recently announced JetBlue's new daily seasonal service between New York, LaGuardia, and Bermuda starting in May 2023. Mr. Speaker, a sustained year-round service between Boston and Bermuda has been a high priority for this government, both as a service to Bermudians and our visitors. Many Bermudians benefit from Boston's array of services and amenities such as medical treatment centers. It also cannot be overstated the importance of Boston as a key Bermuda tourism market, second only to New York City in the number of visitors it brings to Bermuda. Bermuda will also benefit from increased services from these gateway cities. United Airlines service from Newark is scheduled to start in March 2023. British Airways daily service between Bermuda and Heathrow to commence in April. WestJet's increased service to Toronto. Mr. Speaker, by no means is our work complete. As I stated recently, we were shocked to learn of America's decision to suspend their Miami route this summer. We understand the challenges airlines are having and that global air service is down 70%. However, we will not let up and will not let go to increase even more services to Bermuda. We will continue to pursue meetings with American and other airlines to increase service to Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the executive team at JetBlue for believing in Bermuda. The team and I had great meetings as they invited us into their headquarters. I am confident, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Tourism with the Bermuda Tourism Authority will do the appropriate marketing to get the required tourism numbers for the different seasons. As I stated, air service development is a priority. We will continue working with our air service development team to engage all our airline partners as we rebuild Bermuda's air service connections. Mr. Speaker, I will never say it will be an easy task to increase the airline service, but because it is important to Bermuda, and although the odds may be against us sometimes, but as a good book says, I will continue to walk by faith and not by sight. People who walk by faith don't see obstacles, they see opportunities. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of National Security. Mr. Weeks, would you like to present your statement?
Morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to provide this honorable House with an update on the island-wide CCTV improvement project. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that in the 2021 speech from the throne, this government committed to advance a new island-wide CCTV system to include newer features to assist the police in tackling road traffic offenses and violent crime. Mr. Speaker, we are delivering on that promise. I can advise that after an open procurement process, a contract will shortly be awarded to a local company for the new island-wide CCTV system. Some 13 companies bid on the contract, 11 local and 2 overseas companies. At this stage, I will not provide the name of the successful local company, as all the vendors who bid on the project are currently being notified, including the successful company. Mr. Speaker, the contract will include not only the new island-wide CCTV system, but a managed maintenance service contract to ensure its performance and reliability. The new system will also provide for scalability to enable future upgrades and additional capability. Mr. Speaker, there are currently 150 CCTV cameras across the island, of which 75 are inoperable. The new CCTV system will provide 265 CCTV cameras across the island at a higher resolution with more reliable connectivity. This will significantly expand coverage. Mr. Speaker, the new camera's resolution will provide an increased ability to identify people. The software will significantly reduce the amount of time it takes to search footage for individuals and vehicles and provide better outcomes for law enforcement. Mr. Speaker, the new system will include an evidence management capability that will simplify, standardize, and reduce the cost of video evidence across the Bermuda Police Service. The video management software will open up the possibility to integrate with both private and commercial CCTV systems across the island to increase coverage even further. Mr. Speaker, the system will be vendor agnostic, which means that it can be integrated with other systems such as video analytics, gunshot detection, and computer-aided dispatch. Mr. Speaker, this will result in increased safety for our community. CCTV aids in the identification of suspects in the event of criminal activity and deters others from becoming involved in criminal activity. After the contract is signed with the successful vendor, I will provide more details to this honorable House on the contract, including the name of the successful company, cost, and the schedule for the upgrades. Mr. Speaker, this project is part of our commitment at the Ministry of National Security to meet our mission of working together to keep you safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to the end of the statements for this morning.
Reports of committees.
There are none.
Question period.
Members, we're now into the question period. Before we get to questions that may have arisen from the statements this morning, we have two sets of written questions this morning from members to ministers. The first this morning is from the opposition leader to the premier. Opposition leader, would you like to put your question on? And I'll start the clock for 60 minutes.
Will the Honorable Premier and Finance Minister please list and confirm the details of all conditions and items which remain outstanding between the Bermuda government, Jancom Limited, and the owners of Fairmont Southampton from reaching, closing, and executing the final contracts that will enable the redevelopment of the Fairmont Southampton Hotel to proceed?
Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I previously indicated publicly, The parties continue to work on the various agreements that underpin this $430 million transaction, which are considerable and detailed as one would expect. It would be imprudent and not in the public interest to descend into the details of commercially sensitive information in this setting or at all. Whilst I'm not refusing to answer the Leader of the Opposition's question, I'd refer him to Standing Order 18.5, by which I'm not bound to go beyond which I have shared based on my firm view that to do so would not be in the public interests.
Supplementary?
So, Mr. Speaker, if I heard the Premier correctly, at this point, there is no final agreement. The agreement is not ready for execution at this point. So can the Premier just reconfirm that the final agreement between the government and Fairmont Southampton has not been consummated as yet?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, that would not be correct. There is a heads of terms that was signed. The deal is done. We are working through the closing documentation. Again, as I've reminded, there are multiple parties in this transaction, 2 different lenders, the owners, government of Bermuda, and also the local lenders. So there is significant work in transactions, the volumes of documentation that are going through, the multiple teams that are working to ensure that this document can be closed. So what the opposition leader is saying is not correct, but the deal has not closed. This closing documentation is not yet complete.
Second sub? Yes.
When does the Premier envision the closing date for these agreements?
Premier?
Is the honorable member asking question 3 at this time?
No, it was a supplementary that he asked. In fact, what the opposition leader, what the Premier has pointed out is that is your question 3. So you hold it off for question 3. Opposition Whip, do you have a supplementary?
Yes. When does the Premier anticipate the closing documents being executed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's in the context of question number 3, the written question, that is the same question. That answer will come when we get to section 3. It's question 3. Would you like to put question 2 now, honorable member?
Will the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance list and provide details of any new concessions and/or support applied for by the developers other than the concessions already approved in this Honorable House under the Fairmont Southampton Hotel Act?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are none.
Supplementary? Okay. So I'd like to get to to your third question, rather.
Will the Honorable Premier and Finance Minister please confirm a date by which all of the hotel redevelopment agreements associated with the Fairmont Southampton Hotel will be completed and executed?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the 2 critical timelines, which all are working towards, is for the commencement of construction in the second quarter of this year and an opening of the hotel in 2024. As I indicated in my previous answers, the parties continue to work on the various agreements that underpin this $430 million transaction.
Supplementary?
So at this point, if I heard the Premier correctly, I'd like for the Premier to confirm that he does not have a date by which the final closing will occur.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I refer the honorable member to my previous answer.
Second sub? Okay. That brings the members, that brings us to a close for the written questions that are submitted by the opposition leader. We have a second set of written questions that are submitted from MP Jackson to the Premier and Minister of Finance. MP Jackson, would you like to put your questions?
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance confirm to this Honorable House the value of the total accounts receivable due to the Government of Bermuda's Consolidated Fund as at March 31st, 2019, March 31st, 2020, March 31st, 2021, and December 31st, 2022?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the question is a strange one, certainly, as there seems to be a particular fiscal year miss. And given that the fiscal year of December 31st, 2022 is not yet complete and doesn't complete until the end of the year, I will assume that the honorable member had meant to ask March 31st, 2022. Nonetheless, the answers for all of the matters of which she has posed in her question are not in the public domain, and the matter for December 31st, 2022 has not yet been calculated.
Supplementary?
I have a supplementary.
Okay, yes.
So, Mr. Speaker, can the Premier confirm that he has had audited reports for the year ending March 2019, March 2020, and March 2021?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, it is funny as we're in the general economic debate and the Shadow Minister of Finance is asking whether or not we had audited financial statements, and he's about to reply to a budget speech and a budget statement that tabled the audited financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2022 with a clean and unqualified audit opinion. So to answer the honorable member's question, yes, they're audited financial statements which have been tabled in this House in accordance with the law.
Okay. Second sub?
Thank you. As there are audited financial statements, I am certain that the Auditor General would have asked that accounts payable receivables be listed in each of the financial years. So I find it interesting that the Premier cannot provide the balances for year ending March 2019, March 2020, March 2021, when he has audited financial statements. So can the Premier go back to his ministry and get the answers for this House? Thank you.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I will refer the honorable leader of the opposition to Standing Order 17G9. And my response to the question was that the answers to which he seeks are in the public domain. And if you go on the website that is on Parliament, you will see those answers inside of the annual statements of the Consolidated Fund. Standing Order 17G9, matters which are in official
Public domain.
documentation do not need to be answered. They are referred to the public domain.
If the answer has already been circulated publicly, the standing order does refer to the fact that if the information can be obtained from a public source that's already been released, it does not necessarily does not require an answer here in Parliament, if we can refer to that. And the Premier has indicated that the answer you're seeking has already been released in the public domain. Supplementary. You actually two supplements. It's the member behind you is the substantive person for these questions. Okay. MP Jackson, did you have any further supplementary on this question?
No, Mr. Speaker, I can go to
Would
the
you like to do your second question?
Yes, please.
Go right ahead.
Will the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance please provide an aged receivable schedule for the years in question?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the fiscal years March 31st, 2019 and March 31st, 2020, those matters are in the public domain as the honorable opposition asked those questions just a year ago, and those matters were provided. For fiscal year March 31st, 2021 and March 31st, 2022, I do not have those answers yet, Mr. Speaker, as of course you would understand the Ministry of Finance has been engaged in budget, and most of the accounts receivable matters on aging are in the Office of Tax Commissioner. And not to get into private personnel matters, but there is a shortage of staff there at this present point in time. I will happily provide those final 2 years to the honorable member who acts in written form as soon as they are produced. And the acting financial secretary is attempting to get those for next week.
Thank you. MP, the Premier has indicated parts are already in the public domain. The others that aren't produced, aren't already available. He'll be made available to you when they are. Are you okay with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would like to do your third question.
Yes, please. Will the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance please confirm the number and value of receivables written off the government's books and the number and value taken to our courts for recovery?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there have been no write-offs for the government of Bermuda and from the Ministry of Finance. Insofar referrals to the Debt Enforcement Unit in the Attorney General's chambers, there have been, the number is 428, and the value of matters is $32,754,340.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Premier and Minister of Finance is whether he can provide any kind of update on debt collection. At one point, there was an agency, and I'm just curious whether anything is in place now.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I would certainly refer the honorable member to the budget statement, of which we will be debating later today, which speaks quite plainly and clearly to the government's stance on matters related to debt enforcement. And as I had noted in the answer which I gave him previously, a total of $32,754,340 have been referred by the government to the debt enforcement unit of the Attorney General's chambers.
Supplementary?
Can the minister confirm how much was actually recovered by Oars Inc.? They were a collection agency used by the Ministry of Finance.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I will happily refer the honorable member to the standing order, which states that if there is a follow-up answer that is asking for specific information that was not part of the question, the honorable member should place that question in writing, and we'll certainly try to get the information for him.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, this is a supplemental question on recoveries. So that
It speaks to the substantive question. However, the information isn't information that he has readily at hand. But the standing orders refers to that. The standing order says if it isn't part of the original context of the question, which means I wouldn't have brought the information with me because it wasn't in the gist of the original question, I don't have it with me. But it's saying that, it didn't say it's not available. He just said he doesn't have it with him because it wasn't part of the construct of the original question. Okay. And then the standing order also goes on to say that if you would like to get that information, you can have formal question for another setting when the information can be provided.
okay, well, if he's made a commitment that he would get the information, so I would, Mr. Speaker, I ask the Premier to do a similar commitment and let the Parliament know how much Oar Inc. was paid for their services.
No, I'm not sure if he actually made that commitment the second time round. He directed you to the standing orders, which directed you to be able to do a substantive question if you wanted the answer. So let me clarify that because I didn't hear unless I missed it. Rather, he made that commitment. So if he didn't, the standing orders suggest that a substantive question be put for a later date. Did I miss anything, or did you make a commitment?
I will just help the honorable member and refer him to standing order 17-9A.
Yeah, that's the standing order I was speaking to.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman.
much,
That was
Mr.
the standing
Speaker, which
order.
says that notice provisions
You
will apply.
were
Got
standing
it.
orders fine. You were within the constraints of the standing orders.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, yes.
Thank you. Given the Premier's refusal to answer any of the opposition's questions this morning, is he honestly expecting the Bermudian public to believe that he believes in bipartisanship and working with the opposition?
Member, I would not use that. I would not use that terminology in that what the position that the Premier took, which is within the guidelines of the standing orders. So providing is in the guidelines of the standing orders, he has the right to exercise that. And the standing orders make it clear that any information that's already been released in the public domain, the person who is seeking the answer can be directed to the public domain.
May I ask which standing order?
Second supplement, sorry.
Mr. Premier? Because we're just trying to follow because we've updated it.
They have no copy. It is standing order 17-9A6. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order.
Point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I ask that the honorable member be asked to withdraw his statement of where he said that I refuse to answer questions. I provided answers to all 6 questions that have been asked by the opposition in accordance with the standing orders, and I ask that he be asked to withdraw that statement.
Yes. And that's what I was pointing out to you, member, that
I'm happy to put the question in a different way in my second supplementary. Thank
Yeah.
you. Does the Honorable Premier
Just.
No, you've directed me.
Yeah.
I've noted. Withdrawn.
Yes,
Noted.
withdrawn. Thank you.
Does the Premier believe that the sharing of information with the opposition helps us to find solutions for the problems of Bermuda?
Mr. Speaker, I sat in opposition longer than this honorable member, and so I certainly understand. And one of the things that I can say when we were in opposition, we made sure that our questions were submitted in accordance with standing orders. The answers of which I gave and provided today, where there were answers that were written that I could provide the answers to, I did. I provided the answers that were able to be provided. There were a number of questions that were answered very specifically. They are asking me to engage in conjecture and other types of matters, which I cannot do. But I will firmly agree that the sharing of information is vital. And if the opposition tables questions in accordance with standing orders, the government will follow the directions of the standing orders and ensure that the information is provided.
Thank you. Mrs. Jackson, do you have a supplementary? Ms. Jackson?
And Mr. Speaker, I have a second question.
Yes, what's your second question?
Thank you. I'm wondering whether the Premier and Minister of Finance might be able to give any indication of whether any data is being analyzed or collected around the reasons for the high level of taxes that or accounts receivables that have not been collected. If people are in hardship or there are other reasons why the money has not been collected, if there is any kind of database or data that's being collected so that the government can understand why there's so much money that is outstanding?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not entirely certain what I'm trying to answer, but I will refer the honorable member again to the budget statement, which was given in this House last week, which I'm sure we'll be debating this week. And one key point that I'd like to read into the public record, again, for the edification of members, because I even noted that the opposition leader put out a statement last evening, which said, quoting the number in the public domain of the question which he asked about the amount in excess of $300 million. $300 million voucher accounts receivable. And I just want to make sure to share for the honorable member to repeat again with your permission, Mr. Speaker. It said, Mr. Speaker, it should be noted, however, that while the outstanding balance recorded at the end of the fiscal year is high, it includes the taxes to be paid at the beginning of the next quarter, which represents approximately $35 million of the annual payroll tax revenue. Therefore, the $314 million OTC receivable balance recorded at the end of the 21-22 fiscal statements include payroll taxes of more than $113 million, which were paid on time a month later. This is required by accounting standards, but it overstates the amount that is subject to active debt collection efforts. I will also refer the honorable member to the fact that the statements that were given previously in this House and also in the budget statement, which speaks to the work that is happening at the Office of Tax Commissioner's office with the new IT system, with a data warehouse that will be able to increase enforcement efforts, of which we've already seen bearing fruit.
Here. I believe that brings us to a close. Mr. Jackson, you've had your two supplementaries, unless someone else had a supplementary. There are none. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to questions from the statements that were given this morning. The first statement that was delivered by the Minister of Home Affairs, Deputy Premier, you have a question that wishes to be put to you from the MP Jackson. MP Jackson, would you like to put the question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's just a quick question, but I'm just wondering whether the government will provide any information on the best ways to install the LED lights so that they're getting the maximum effect. And just to give an example, maybe just giving tips on putting the LED on an external fixture, which might be a light that's on all night, versus a light in a hallway that maybe is only used for a couple of minutes a day. Now, people may be undermining that, but there are a number of people out there that may not consider it. And just as a public service announcement that when they go out, whether a message like that could be included so that people just maximize the efficiency of those bulbs. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
We will give energy tips to the members of the public around these Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary? Supplementary, would you like to put a second question? That's fine. Okay, thank you. Minister, that's the only member who indicated had questions for you. We'll now move on to the next statement. The next statement in the name of the Minister of Transport. MP Jackson would also like to put a question to you in that regard as well. Minister Herbert and MP Jackson, put your question.
Thank you. I'd like to just thank JetBlue and all members who have worked hard to make that direct flight between Bermuda and Boston reactivated. It's much appreciated, and the community does recognize the work that's gone into that. So thank you. The question that I have for the Minister of Transport is, I'm just wondering whether now the BTA, the hotels, and other stakeholders will now work to make sure that there is a collaborative effort so that everyone is working in unison as far as maintaining a clear message and a solid product proposition to maintain the demand for and the frequency of air travelers who want to come to Bermuda. So I'm just curious whether the BTA, the hoteliers, and other stakeholders will now work together so that we can sustain this direct flight between Boston and Bermuda.
Yes.
Minister? Yeah. Oh. Yes. You're so quick, I missed the minister. I'm sorry. My fault. Supplementary?
No supplementary. I have a second question.
Second question, yes.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to ask the minister whether there will be any sort of regular now and ongoing conversations, especially with the delicate Boston-Bermuda flight in mind, but whether there will be regular and ongoing meetings for feedback from JetBlue to make sure that we are able to mitigate any surprises that may come up in the future, and we are getting any feedback around any concerns that JetBlue may have so that we maintain a relationship and can respond quickly so that we do not find ourselves in a situation where the direct flight is canceled or postponed again.
If you can try and be more precise with your question so we can get a clearer response or direct response that you may be more helpful. Minister?
The answer is yes, and even more.
Okay. All right. Supplementary? No supplementary? Third question, yes.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister of Transport whether there were any minimum revenue guarantees that were attached to any of the flight announcements that he has announced today.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, we did not reveal if BAA, the Bermuda Airport Authority, gives MRGs, as we're quite familiar, that's how it works, or how much, if they do. All these contracts go through the BAA, Bermuda Airport Authority.
Supplementary? Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, to the Honorable Minister, have there been any discussions with Delta in regards to return of daily service from Atlanta and New York?
Yes.
Okay. Sup? Second sub?
Trying to get a little bit more of a yes, so I ask another question. To the Honorable Minister, can the Honorable Minister provide more detail if the talks have so far been successful, and if we will see, certainly for the high season, a return of the daily service from Atlanta and New York? And if the answer is yes, when will that be?
Mr. Speaker, discussions continue on.
Okay. All right. Any further questions to the Minister of Transport? None? Minister, that brings to a conclusion questions for you this morning. We'll now move on to the next statement, which is in the name of the Minister of National Security. And Minister, you have two members who have indicated they have questions for you this morning. MP Jackson, would you like to put your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have one question. Will these cameras have the capability to monitor speed at all?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Supplementary?
Yes. I'm just thinking through my supplementary question. Given that these cameras may be able to monitor speed, I'm just curious whether the minister will be taking into consideration some of the intricacies of Bermuda roads and how speed can be monitored efficiently.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Supplementary or a second question?
I better ask a supplementary on that one. So then, if the speed camera, if the camera is monitoring speed and it happens to be in an area that's an open stretch and a car wants to pass horse and carriage, will the speed monitors be able to identify that that was actually not speeding but just passing another car? Need to ask.
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Thank you. Supplementary.
No.
That's right. You have questions on. I forgot that. You've indicated you have
Yes,
a question.
Mr. Speaker, I'm
Would you like to put your first question?
I'm trying to change the line of length, but I do, it is, Mr. Speaker, it is good to see that speed cameras will be included. Mr. Speaker, on the second, I might be getting to that. On the second page of the minister's statement, the minister says there are currently 150 CCTV cameras across the island, of which 75 are inoperable. Mr. Speaker, will that current system be used if possible or be completely replaced?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The current system will all be replaced with 265 new CCTV cameras.
Thank you. Supplementary? Further questions? No? Well, members, that brings us to a close of close of statements in question period this morning. We'll now move on.
Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches.
Would any member wish to make a contribution at this point? There are no members who wish to ask questions, make a contribution on the congratulatory obituary speeches. We'll move on.
Okay, matters of privilege,
There are none.
personal explanation,
There are none.
notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance,
There are none.
introduction of bills,
There are none.
government bills,
None.
opposition bills,
None.
private bills,
None.
notice of motions,
There are none.
and now orders of the day.
We'll now move on to the orders of the day. And members, the order of the day is the business why I think we've all gathered here this morning and the country is listening in. Last week, we had a presentation of the budget for this coming year. And today, it's the opposition's reply to the budget. And I'm talking a few minutes just to get those who got to get their cameras sorted out and ready in place. And I believe this opposition, before you start, the Premier will move us into that position. The Premier will make his comments, and then the cameras will start rolling to film record the presentation presented by the opposition leader. Mr. Premier, would you like to open this for this session?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2023-24 be approved.
Any objections to that? None?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the kicking off of today's general economic debate, which is an annual tradition of this House, I sincerely hope that the conversations will be measured and productive. There are serious challenges that this country has faced. The government has laid out a budget for growth. We look forward to engaging in a constructive debate today with the members of the opposition as we all look to make sure that we have constructive solutions on a way forward for this country as we continue to deliver the economic growth which we've witnessed and seen, and make sure to set a path for future economic growth and development, despite the challenges that this country has gone through with a once-in-a-century pandemic and 40-year high global inflation. We have acted, and I hope that there are constructive recommendations that will come out of this so the government can continue to progress in matters related to the economy of this country. So I look forward to this debate today, Mr. Speaker. It will be a long one, but I look forward to responding at the end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Mr. Opposition Leader, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also begin just by making a brief operational comment.
And while you're making that brief introduction, I'll remind the sergeant to distribute all the statement booklets for members.
And Mr. Speaker, we have also given an electronic copy for the public to follow.